Well, hello there, everybody. I am Adam Noyce, and joining me is my co-host of Welcome to 10 Forward, Jim Frasca. We're going to be talking about the 3 best Federation uniforms that there are in all of Star Trek. You want to learn more? Stick around, and let's have some fun. Star Trek has some pretty good uniforms throughout all of them, if you ask me.
I had a hard time picking just 3. I really
Well,
did.
here's the thing. I think the Federation has some good uniforms, but I'm talking about Star Trek in general, just in this moment here.
I thought we were limiting this to Federation.
I burped. Shut up.
All right, Klingon. If we're
gonna list our 3.
We're throwing out good uniforms. Klingons.
Yeah, the Klingon uniforms from the original movies forward are fantastic. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about. We've limited this to just the Federation, so we're being really niche with our lists.
In the last episode, we kind of, before we started talking about what our picks were, we kind of explained how we got to that. So, what makes you think of a good Starfleet uniform?
Well, I think a uniform in general that's good needs to achieve a few things, which kind of flies in the face of some of what the Starfleet is, because I don't really want to get into the debate of is Starfleet a military unit or not.
I agree. Yeah, that can be a whole episode in itself.
I think a uniform needs to achieve three big things, or at least a few. 1 is it needs to intimidate a bit. 2, it needs to embody unity. You are a part of something larger than yourself. And then 3, it needs to aesthetically look cool. It needs to aesthetically look like, okay, this is a nice looking uniform. It needs to be practical without being flashy. You know, and it needs to be a bit unique. I hate to bring up Star Wars in this, but Star Wars did this in droves with the Empire.
Yeah,
their uniforms are phenomenal. To me, they're some of the best fictitious uniforms ever created.
Let me give some of my criteria points. I didn't think about being intimidating, and I think that is a good one. I went with practicality, comfort. Does it convey that you are part of the Federation, and what position are you in part of the Federation? So that was a 2-parter.
Now I say intimidation with a bunch of asterisks behind it because you know the Federation, out of basically all the races, or all the factions, I should say, within Star Trek, is the least intimidating one of them all, because they're specifically designed to be that way.
They're supposed to be open arms.
Yes.
They're not supposed to be
They're not
terrifying.
supposed to. Yes, but at the same time, I like the idea that if some shit hits the fan and you see somebody from the Federation show up, you know something's going to get done. They are a member of the Federation.
I like when you say unity. You know exactly what you're getting.
Yes.
I think that is a very good word to describe the uniform, showing the unity of the Federation. I think that is a fantastic word.
Yeah. Here's the interesting thing with your criteria, though, that I find kind of interesting. Yours, to me, describe more of the combat uniforms than the dress uniforms in terms of what you're looking at.
I was thinking of everyday uniforms.
Well, to me, every day, if you're looking at the Federation as a military unit, as I do,
would be the combat unit.
Those would be your fatigues.
I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, because especially with 1 on my list, it's not a fatigue. It is a blatant dress uniform. Let's start this. Jim, what is your number 3? And we'll go 3 to 1.
I don't think this is a surprise, especially to you, because I think you saw I had my screen share earlier on accident.
Right.
And you have convinced me. You have changed me.
Oh.
The Wrath of Khan and
those
uniforms are, and I don't even know why. And I think even though these are their everyday, no, they're not. These are their dress uniforms.
These are their dress uniforms.
But they use them as everyday.
Well, to be clear, engineering has their own uniforms. I was going to get into that in my thing, but these are our dress uniforms. We are looking our best. We are looking our sharpest. These are very Napoleonic in style and function.
But right away you can tell, A, they're the Federation, and 100%. B, they're high-ranking Federation, and C, they ain't messing around. So I think that hits right off the bat, like 3 out of the 6 criteria that we came up with.
It's got to be the original movies, those uniforms in particular, because those uniforms would then be later used in like TNG and stuff like that for like flashback sequences and stuff like that, and they've changed a little bit. Most notably, they got rid of the turtlenecks, and they don't look anywhere near as good.
We knocked the pilot episode of the original series with them looking like turtlenecks, and that's all it was. This is a choice. This is a statement, and it was intentional.
And as the movies went along, I'm not quite sure if it's in The Wrath of Khan or not, but I know it's in 3 forward. The color of the undershirt would designate whether they're a medical, science, or an officer.
I did not know that. I'm under the impression that as an admiral, you're kind of a jack of all trades at that point.
Yes. I think they have white.
So it doesn't necessarily matter what your specialty is because you're good at everything.
I think anyone captain and above has a white undershirt. So there is a way to distinguish what rank they are, but I want to get into that a little bit more later because that is much higher on my list.
All right. What's your third favorite Starfleet uniform?
My third favorite pick are the pinks and purples. The grays and purples from Deep Space Nine into the TNG movies. Yes. These ones in particular.
Yes.
I love these things, and the reason why I love these is because in universe, it makes 100% sense why they evolved from what the TNG era ones were. I love these uniforms because they look military. And that was the entire purpose of redesigning these uniforms, is they wanted to make it more military. And having it go to the dark color scheme and having the undershirt be the color does a couple of things. One, you can still tell who's who in terms of what position they are within the Federation themselves, right? So you can still see whether they're engineering and stuff like that. That's something that I know was big with you, Jim.
Yep.
It also has the intimidation factor. Things have changed within the Federation. We are now at war.
They look more professional.
They kind of have a jumpsuit look to them, but not in a bad way, particularly in the shoulders. And while I'm not a big fan of the TNG movies, I think they look best in the TNG movies. I love how they look, particularly in First Contact.
I think in the movies there's more. It's like a better cloth or almost felt on the shoulders, whereas in the show I think it's still just cloth with less padding in it. So in the movies I think it's a nicer material, but even in the shows, still fantastic.
And I think that these uniforms, because these aren't their dress uniforms.
No, these are their.
These are the definitions of fatigues. They look like an Army combat uniform.
Yeah.
They feel like an Army combat uniform. And one reason why I like them so much is because now that the Federation is at war, they're embracing that military side of things. And it's kind of like I have a feeling that once they get out of the war, they would probably go back to something a little less practical with the more colorful uniforms again.
They kind of do.
Yeah, they kind of do. And the thing is, I just like those uniforms. They feel like Army combat uniforms. Like when you watch the Siege of AR-558 and they're wearing those uniforms, I feel like those are practical uniforms.
I agree.
And like I don't think seeing those other uniforms would work quite as well in that particular scenario.
The seasons 1 through 4, like I said in the worst episodes, I think they really do look like pajamas. I hate to say it, and I know you disagree. I know, but at least we can both agree that seasons 5, 6, and 7, and then the First Contact and later on TNG movies, they made a huge upgrade, and they look fantastic.
Yeah, they do.
Before we move on, I will show you my first honorable mention. And it has to do with kind of the TOS and kind of the pilot that you mentioned in the last episode. I have to say, I know you don't watch the new shows. I'm a pretty big fan of Strange New Worlds. I am more doing this to show you what they look like. I like them, but I want to know what your opinion is, because it's supposed to be modernizing the pilot episode's outfits.
Yes.
While also making it look like the original series. I like them.
They're okay.
I like them quite a
They're
bit.
okay.
I like the bands specifically.
You see, these look like the J.J. Abrams uniforms.
They do. And I think it's the lighting, too.
It is. I'm going to tell you this, Jim. If I had to pick an honorable mention, I would pick the uniforms from the Orville.
That's the Union, not the Federation.
I know,
Adam.
that's the Union, not the Federation. I know, but I genuinely like the uniforms from the Union. They look fine. I
like them.
They look fine. They look in canon.
They couldn't be in my top 3. But again, I knew we were going to be talking about TOS in this. So I just had to get your opinion on it. We're talking about practicality. We're talking about functionality.
Okay.
You have... And I did my research. I looked it up. And every single list... These were listed as in the bottom 5 in every other list. I strongly disagree, and I think that the NX-01 crew uniform is hugely underrated.
I do too. It is not in my list. It is not in my list, but I enjoy those uniforms.
They have pockets, Adam.
They have pockets.
I remember when watching TNG for the first time, I could tell when they were going to be like fighting somebody in a scene, because they all of a sudden have the giant ass clip thing for the phaser.
Right.
These guys don't need it because it just fits in their pocket.
It fits in their pockets. And I think that's one reason why these uniforms work so well to me, is because their shoulder pads
tell who they are.
They are unbelievably practical, and that makes perfect sense considering what era Enterprise takes place in. I love them.
I think that they're highly underrated, and I understand that they look like jumpsuits, but let's face it, at that time, in canon, it's only 100 years from now. They are basically astronauts. They are not space explorers. They're
they are
astronauts.
not Kirk.
Right, exactly.
And the only thing, I'd never liked T'Pol's outfits. I never liked her outfits.
She's not part of the Federation.
She's not part of the
Federation.
Federation.
We don't include her, and we don't include
the Doctor.
The Noblean, I can't remember his name. Phlox. We don't include him. But this was the rest of the crew.
I enjoy these uniforms immensely for all the reasons that you state. It is not in my top 3 list. However, I was almost going to put it on... they almost beat out the blacks and purples from Deep Space Nine. They almost did.
Before we move on to your next, my honorable mention, or my second place, is kind of not really an honorable mention. It's more a second division of the NX-01. The Mako uniforms are military uniforms.
They are military uniforms, yeah. To me, those don't look Federation.
They're technically not. They're Earth Defense Force. They're not
Earth
Federation.
Defense Forces, and that's why they get away with it.
Right. Because, again, the Federation isn't military. But this was on a Federation ship. I really like this camouflage. It looks futuristic, but also, again, practical.
It also looks like a natural step up from what we're wearing now.
Exactly. What's your number 2, Adam?
My number 2 are the uniforms from Deep Space Nine seasons 1 through 4. I love these suckers. I love black uniforms. I'm such a fascist.
Why are you doing this to me?
To me, these actually look more like military army combat uniforms than the ones that were in TNG. Because the ones in TNG, I'm like, I would hate having to clean those every 5 seconds.
Now, I can't remember. Are these also 2 pieces or are they 1 piece? I think you're right. That makes it a little bit better. I just don't like the slit. The slit is what throws me off.
You don't like the slit here?
I don't.
See, I don't mind them. I don't mind them. Though it is interesting. It is interesting to note how this became the outer color and the shoulders became the inner color with Deep Space Nine's uniform.
I agree.
Because Deep Space Nine's uniform is this.
Yeah, but see, I like the ones in Voyager a little bit better. The slit isn't nearly as far down. And I think that's what really gives me the... Because think about it like this. We're talking about, like, making the uniform professional, right? And
you know what? I never noticed that before, Jim. You're 100% correct.
The slit's all the way down, it looks more casual. I like it when the slit only goes down to the top of the color. And that's why I don't like it.
I never noticed that detail before.
Yeah. But like when the slit is different and it's only, 3 inches, that looks more like a buttoned-up shirt versus, down to their...
Now, you see, this is interesting, too, because actually this is a good image. I'm glad I found this one. This looks like a dress uniform. This looks like an Army combat uniform.
I can see it. Yeah, I see that.
I like these uniforms. I do. I like the black. I like how it's on the shoulder pads. And then I like the idea that you wear these to nicer events.
And then you could even still have the real dress uniforms for even more extravagant.
Sure. I do love them in Deep Space Nine. I'm sorry, in Generations, though. I love the look of that movie in general. I genuinely like these. I think they are a step up from the TNG ones. And I think it fits Voyager and Deep Space Nine more because of the nature of what those shows are.
I could see it for
Deep
Voyager,
Space Nine
definitely.
is a down and dirty show where they have to fix things and everything like that. While if you look at TNG, it's a diplomat show.
Pristine, yeah.
Yes, it was a diplomat show. These guys are going out and exploring new worlds and everything like that. And then in Voyager, I think it makes sense because they're stranded in the middle of nowhere.
They need to make the cheaper...
that was a science vessel, if I remember correctly.
It is not... Yeah, it's not an exploration vessel, and it's not...
it becomes an
flagship.
It becomes an exploration vessel by proxy.
By circumstances.
Not because it was designed to be that way. So I think that's how I look at it, is I look at those ones where the colors are inverted and you have the black body and the colored shoulders as the Army Combat Fatigue version of the TNG era era uniform.
I don't disagree. I think I brought attention to details on some parts of the uniform that you may not have noticed that I didn't like, and you brought attention to details that I didn't notice.
I never noticed the slit going down further on Deep Space Nine than in Voyager. I've never noticed that before. I mean, it's so clear that the TNG era uniforms, those are blazers that they're wearing as the tops, while in the Voyager and Deep Space Nine ones, they're not.
Yeah.
So I think that's what lends proof that these are more formal uniforms versus the more fatigued uniforms. I like them for their practicality.
As they say in Men in Black 3, let's agree to disagree.
Yeah. Let's agree to disagree. I'm just
We're really going to disagree in this next one.
Let's find out.
I really thought about this. I really did. Initially, I was going to go with season 5 through 7 of Deep Space Nine when they got their new
when they got the purple, the blacks and purples
and First Contact. I genuinely was going to go with those. I reminded myself of the season finale of Picard season 3. I don't know if you've seen these uniforms.
I have.
I genuinely think these uniforms are an homage to what the TNG uniforms were and taken to the next level. I genuinely think that. And again, it's not... these are not battle-ready uniforms. These are uniforms for the higher ranking that will never see the light of battle.
I don't understand Star Trek's... because these would never be on my top 10 list. I don't understand what is Star Trek's new obsession with leather.
My honorable mention for these is the leather jacket. The original leather jacket.
I never liked those.
I know.
I never liked them.
I know. But I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that you don't like Picard's leather jacket. And I was going to say it is the next generation of the leather jacket.
It is. I can see the progression of that. I just think leather is so impractical in every way, shape, and form for a uniform.
Also, look at the ridges on this
Yes.
jacket. I think that was a more direct inspiration for the ridges on the Deep Space Nine,
The Deep Space Nine ones, yeah.
5, 6, and 7 seasons.
Blacks and purples.
And I'm so upset that they only used them in the last episode, especially on Geordi. I think it looks fantastic, especially knowing that like he was always the test subject for new uniforms, and they all look like crap on him. For him to get this uniform and just look amazing, I have to give it my number
I don't
one.
think they. I
right
don't
now.
think they look amazing because I'm not thrilled about leather as being a part of a
I
uniform.
like the shiny.
I don't,
Well, let me do this then real quick.
because to me that uniform makes them just look like they're members of a biker gang, and I'm
Let
like,
me-
that's not Star Trek.
You had mentioned. Let me know what you think of this. This is Geordi's fatigue uniform for the rest of the season.
Hmm.
It's this over here.
I like
don't know.
that. I like that a lot more.
I like this too.
Oh, I like the one on Will Riker too.
Yeah, that's his.
I
admiral.
think it looks kind of weird on Riker himself, but I think I'd like that on the whole.
And this has, if I remember correctly, like the black is leather, but then the top is like a felt. But I was really torn between, I don't know what the other one went. Doesn't matter. The like fatigues and their like final episode.
Yeah.
I was really torn between them. I knew you weren't gonna like the leather ones. Pretty sure you would like the fatigues.
Yeah, I do like the fatigues.
Adam, hey, I wonder what your favorite uniform in all of Star Trek is.
The red uniforms from the original movies, hands down, bar none, those are the best uniforms in Star Trek ever because they actually feel like
Wow.
they actually feel like a uniform. So yeah, look at these.
Oh,
Like look at these. Like here's the more fatigue one for like outdoorsy stuff, right? It's there's practical reason for it. Like it's a bit thicker. It's more of a felt. It's to keep you a little bit warmer. Here's the dress uniform, and here's the dress uniform for the women. Looks great on both. These are the engineering uniforms.
you can tell who's who.
You can tell who's who. These are the regular uniforms of ensigns right here.
Even the ensign one is beautiful.
I'm not quite sure. I think this is medical. The white one back here is medical. The only one of these I don't like is the leather one. God damn, these uniforms are sexy. And you know what's cool? Look what happens when you give them the original colors. Those don't look terrible.
No, I think I prefer the red.
I do prefer the red, and there's a reason why they chose the red uniforms, and that's because the designers of these uniforms realized that red was or maroon, I should say, was the only color where all the uniforms looked consistently good. All of these uniforms looked consistently good was
In red.
with that shade of red. There was almost like a science behind it.
Go back
And-
to that one. Their sashes are different colors.
Their sashes are different colors, and that's how you distinguish rank.
Their undershirts too. The
Yeah.
guy all the way to
So-
the left. Is
So
that
Kirk's
McCoy?
is white, right? Because he's the head officer. His
And
is a brown
engineering.
because he's engineering. She's
Yeah.
purple, communications. He's got a greenish blue
Greenish
because he's
blue.
medical.
Doctor.
And I want to say Spock would have white because he's a captain.
Again,
by
it's
this point.
subtle, but it's not hidden.
Right. And I love this. I love these uniforms. These are clearly dress uniforms. They look like a Napoleonic uniform.
It screams Starfleet. It screams military. It screams unity. I think that one hits all of the checklists.
Yeah, because I mean, like here's a British Napoleonic naval uniform,
I see all
and
of
you
the
can
inspiration.
see the inspirations all over the place. And that doesn't surprise me, considering the fact that Nicholas Meyer is a big Napoleonic War nerd, and he loves his Horatio Hornblowers and his stuff. And you know, those are stories of on the high seas and naval battles during Napoleonic Wars, and that's how he treated Star Trek too.
You know, I know another person who's a huge Napoleon fan.
I don't know if you can see any of the shit that's behind me on my goddamn collection stand, but it's nothing but Napoleonic stuff.
Really?
I'm a sucker for it, and one reason why I'm such a sucker for that particular style of uniform is I'm like, You know what? In this era, it would make sense to me why we would suddenly go back to Napoleonic-style uniforms in the Navy, because they're not fighting. Everything is done electronically. Everything is done within the ship itself. We're not actually firing cannons at each other. Everything's done through a computer. We're pressing buttons. And this is another case where even the fatigue version of their dress uniforms looked good. It also helps, and I'll fully admit this, I've got nostalgia for them. These were the uniforms I grew up on in terms of Star Trek. And I've always stated this, that the 6 original Star Trek movies are my Star Trek.
I think that's a fair segue, because to me, Star Trek will always be the Next Generation.
Right.
And with Picard wrapping up with a huge homage to the Next Generation's uniforms, I think that's why I like them so much. They may not be the most practical or whatever, but I see the inspiration, and I appreciate that as a viewer who grew up on TNG.
So there you go.
Top 3
our
uniforms.
Our three favorite best uniforms from the Federation. I was shocked how diverse our answers were. I was worried that we were going to have
the same ones.
Almost the same ones. I'm genuinely surprised you did not mention the TNG uniforms from season 3 forward.
They were.
Yeah.
They certainly were. I had to choose the original series because the movies are just iconic. When you think Star Trek, 9 times out of 10, that's what people think of. And then I made my criteria when I was making my list practicality. So I had to choose NX-01.
Okay.
I love the next gen, like you said, season 3 and onward. I have an engineering outfit. I even have the pants. And look, I couldn't make myself a captain or an admiral, so I'm a lieutenant commander. Only 3 pips. Only 3 pips, Adam. Oh, and by the way, it's the right color pips too. It's two gold, 1 black. I did not think my number 2 worst was your number 2 best.
Well, because I think you and I were both looking at them in very different lights.
100%.
Because I was looking at them as functional, as these are their fatigues, these are their work uniforms, where they're actually getting down and dirty, while the TNG era ones, the with the blazers, were the dresser, the more uptight, prim proper uniforms.
Well, I think this was a lot of fun.
I learned a lot about you here tonight, Jim. I had no idea what your number 1. I was not expecting that. I genuinely thought number 1 was going to be the TNG season 3 through 7 uniforms.
They're great uniforms.
They are. Well, Jim, if you want to pimp
yes.
yourself out.
Word. I'm on YouTube. On Thursdays, I stream. Find me at Scrappy Doo. SCRAPYD0O. I'm a pimp.
This is so embarrassing.
Thank you for having me on your show, Adam. I really appreciate it, and you're one of the few people I can talk Trek to.
Yeah,
so
likewise. Thank you so much, Jim, for joining me. Stay tuned for more episodes of the What Are We Talking About podcast. That's the fucking show.
Unwanted,
that I do,
unneeded, something.
Something, yeah. Unrelated, unwanted, unneeded.
Welcome to 10 Forward. How about that one?
Yeah, that's the one that we're doing here. Stay tuned for more episodes of Welcome to 10 Forward, and we'll see you in the next one. Live long and prosper.